broadcasting live from a multiverse movie prominently featuring a bagel. Not that one. This is Pop Culture Reference, your one-stop reference for all things pop culture. I'm one of your hosts, Garrett Strother.
And I'm one of your other hosts, Seamus Connolly.
Before we cover Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for this week's show, let's go ahead and jump right in to some news.
Starting off with the tragic passing of legend Tina Turner just a couple days ago as of the day of recording. She was 89, I believe, and, I straight up listen to Tina Turner every single day. I mean, it's on the radio, and it's the same radio station, but I do listen. I was actually, when I heard the news, they were playing What's Love Got to Do with It, and I was absolutely heartbroken when that text headline came through.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if they were breaking that news on the radio station or something with that, and they had said something beforehand, but it was a weird serendipitous moment for me in that moment.
I mean, it's hard to overstate what an absolute superstar she is. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. Kennedy Center Honors recipient. I mean, how many presidents did she meet? I mean, the true queen of rock and roll. More hits than you could shake a stick at.
Yeah, seriously. Absolutely legendary, and absolutely makes Thunderdome, right? Tina Turner in Thunder. That's like on the cover. Good. On the cover of that, it doesn't say like Mel Gibson is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It says Tina Turner in Beyond Thunderdome, and that is to this day my favorite detail about that entire choice.
Also great in John McTiernan's Last Action Hero.
Oh, absolutely.
I think she's an underrated actor because she didn't do a lot, but when she showed up, she knocked it out of the park. Absolute star power to the maximum, and she will be missed. Also, sadly, on our list of RIPs today is actor Ray Stevenson, who many of you probably do not know the name of, but has been a kind of that guy in dozens of movies and TV shows. We know him probably most intimately, Seamus, as Gar Saxon in Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars, but yes. He's also another upcoming Star Wars character on the Ahsoka series. He also was prominently featured in a recent hit, RRR, as the primary antagonist and did a really good, really scary job in that.
A lot of swashbuckling in this man's career. Lots of Thor, literally the Three Musketeers movie from 2011.
Oh, the Logan Lerman one?
I think so.
I didn't know that.
Pirate movies, medieval movies.
Just a solid journeyman actor who, he was only 58 years old, really cut down, young, and it's sad to see that happen, especially when, he seems to be one of the primary antagonists of an upcoming, very exciting Disney Plus series that it's too bad he won't get to see the reception to.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing that kind of last role for him in something that I'm already very excited to see what they're going to do with it, but this is going to add a little extra bittersweetness to that entire season there.
Speaking of the Empire, Seamus.
Oh god, good transition.
We've got some Disney Danger.
Oh, Disney Danger. I forget what the sound is for Disney Danger.
Just last week we did this exact same thing. It's the Empire sound.
Oh, yes, of course.
When your woo is going to be out of tune with the other woo.
It's going to harmonize, Garrett, don't you? I'm editing this one. It'll harmonize, damn you.
So, a kind of brief addendum to a piece of news that we were covering last week for our Disney Danger, as Disney Plus is removing their original series and films in the next few days. They have already removed, with no warning, overnight, the series Prop Culture, which I don't know if you watched any of, Seamus, but was either a launch title on Disney Plus or like a pretty quickly after launch title on Disney Plus, where they went into the archives and talked about how important it is to preserve pieces of film history, and went through film by film. Mary Poppins, Muppet Movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Tron, and we're like, wow, look at all these props and pieces of film history that should be preserved in a documentary so people can learn about them.
I mean, that is the best concept for a show ever. I never actually delved too far into it. I saw a lot of clips and I really like the idea of it, but how appropriate is it that this documentary series about about preserving history, specifically Disney history, is being struck with the rest of the things that Disney wants to bury once again. It is very sad and, more than borderline insulting that they just tried to kind of slip that one under the radar after they already made the biggest announcements about it. But the irony, it seems, is they are aware of it and they're trying to skirt it a little bit, probably.
I completely agree. And that went and backfired on them. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah,
so,
I wonder why.
I also can't even imagine that royalties, that's not a scripted series. I guess it's technically a scripted series, but, you don't have dozens of actors that you're paying out royalties to. Not that should justify taking things off streaming anyway, but I'm like, the pennies a year that is going to save Disney, it's just unconscionable. It's insulting, like you said, but we're not out of the streaming woods yet because we've got a Netflix nuisance.
Netflix, no, oh god, oh my goodness, another one I totally remember this thing for. Oh god. I might have made that one. I don't even remember.
You did in fact make that one.
It's just the clown horns. I hope it's the clown horns.
Netflix, in an update on their perpetual ill-advised war on profile and account sharing, have announced that they're going to charge you $8 a month for an additional profile to live on a different IP address. So, sorry college kids who use your parents' Netflix, or you and me, Seamus, who use our parents' Netflix.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god. I have not, interestingly enough, kind of how I predicted, I have not even had the need to really go on Netflix in a while.
Weird.
And so I haven't checked if I've been officially kicked yet, but I can only imagine that I am in the wind now unless I guess buy my own Netflix account, which I'm not going to do, dude.
No,
I'm straight up just not going to do it.
I will probably get a free trial to watch the new season of I Think You Should Leave, cancel it, and then not think about Netflix again until the new season of Stranger Things comes out, and then I create a dummy email, and then I do my free trial, and then...
I think this is the truest true fall of Netflix now. I think I think the majority of people are going to have the exact same reaction of not realizing, and then when they finally do, they're like, I'm not going to do that, what? And then they forget about it forever, because Netflix don't have anything, man. They really have nothing for me.
They're about to get a reality check real quick, I think.
Oh yeah. Numbers are going to plummet, and that is going to finally, I was going to say maybe make them shape up, but it really isn't. I think they'll probably make up enough money for people that are like, all right, I guess that's just the norm, is just having a Netflix account, so I guess I'll just hit the random upgrade button and forget about it.
But Seamus, we need to review Kissing Booth 12 for the podcast.
I don't even know what that is, Garrett. Kissing Booth 12?
It's a series of teen romantic comedies. I don't know how many there really are, but
oh my gosh, that will be the new market. Is just Netflix original teen romantic comedies that they already have a ton of, I feel like, anyway. I think that'll save them.
Fingers crossed.
But onto some news I am actually so excited about, Garrett. I have been waiting for this day for so many years. Dare I say my entire life, Garrett?
I think you dare.
I think I may dare. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid 3 remake announcement with a trailer, with intentions to finally get this franchise back on its feet again after the last couple have not really hit the bullseye that much, but it has been what fans have been asking for decades. As long as Metal Gear Solid 3 has been out, basically, people have been wanting to play it in the most updated format possible, and it is finally happening without Hideo Kojima, famously, of course, which is one of the weirder parts of this. There's been not a single mention of him or his name or his original story yet, but I'm sure that will get plenty of controversy as things unfold a little bit more.
Well, we'll probably have to cover that at some point as a pop culture reference, I think, when we get a little bit closer to this release date. But Seamus, I am very happy for you. I know it's a long time coming, and I'm happy for me that Metal Gear Solid Solid 1 through 3 are coming to PlayStation 5 this fall, with Volume 2 to come at a later date, because I hate to say it, but I got my Metal Gear Solid collection almost immediately for my PS3 right before I got my PS5. So I played one level, went to the PS5, never really looked back. And
that's okay.
I gotta say, it's hard. I think we've talked about this a little bit. It's hard to go back to the PS3 with that controller now that I'm used to, like, a good controller.
That has been my biggest thing, because I own, like, 3 different versions of, like, an HD collection of those games, and the most advanced thing I can play it on is a PS Vita, and that still feels better to me than a PS3 controller at this point. So I'm honestly kind of more excited about this Masters collection and the however many volumes they decide to pull out of the woodworks, because I will buy every single one, and they will be so good on a big high definition screen with a big heavy controller. Oh, I cannot wait.
6 pixels at a time.
Oh yeah, that is gonna be the weirdest, is going back to Metal Gear Solid 1, but I will force you. There are less and less excuses, Garrett, for you to get into the Kingdom Hearts level of insane lore that you have to understand for these games.
I'm excited. You know, I am a John Carpenter boy, and so is Hideo. So
yes, honest to God, Snake Eater is the best James Bond video game ever created, hands down. You will really fall in love with that.
Well, that excites me a lot. But do you think it's time, Seamus, to move on to our main segment?
Ooh, yes, let's enter the Spider-Verse, Garrett.
For today's main segment, we're going to be covering the 2018 animated sensation, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Seamus, you and I knew each other when this movie came out, but I don't think we've ever really talked about what our initial experience with it was.
Gosh, yeah, it feels like it came out so long ago at this point, but that might be because my initial experiences with this movie were the summer it came out. It came out in the summer, right?
Yep.
The summer it came out.
I saw it in the summer, at least.
It must have been, because I was working at my local movie theater, as I did in the summers, and I basically spent every single second that I could in that theater watching that movie. Like, any different part that I could see, I was like, damn, why is my eyes are just pleased watching this movie. It's just unlike anything I've ever seen. I would hear the soundtrack from the hallway where I would stand as an usher for hours on ends, and I would be like, my God, maybe I'll go check out this, maybe I'll go see if anybody's on their phone or whatever in the theater, and I would pop in for 10 or 15 minutes and just drink it all up. And obviously I saw it, clean the first time, hadn't, seen anything much about it, no spoilers, but through that job, I watched it in the theater like 3 or 4 times before it was out fully, and then just every day pretty much just catching pieces of it. So I really like this movie, Garrett. I think that's a long way to say that, but I really, really like this movie.
I do too, Seamus. It is... I think at the time that I saw it, I thought it was the most impressive animated film I'd ever seen, and I don't think that now, but it's definitely up there.
Oh yeah, I think so too. One of the most visually impressive animated things I have ever seen to this day, and it makes me so excited for what... the future of this franchise, the future of like what Sony Animation specifically can do with really interesting, unique IPs like Miles Morales and the Spider-Verse. It's so much more pleasing to me than like the super smooth bubble illumination style clean animation that most movies are when they're animated and for like more of a family audience.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing about this, though, and the thing that made it resonate with audiences, like my parents like the animated Spider-Man multiverse movie, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Is that it's a really, really solid story. It's funny, it's engaging, and frankly, I think that, and this is a big thing, because I think there are a lot of superhero movies that do this element well, but more do it not well than do it well, especially in the contemporary landscape. It's probably the most invested I am in a protagonist before they become their superhero counterpart of really any superhero origin movie I can think of.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, I definitely can agree with that. Miles Morales as just like a kid trying to, talk to his uncle about girls and like survive in his, very different kind of school, and I don't know, by the time he actually does run into, like, Spider-Man and, like, doing all the Spider-Man things, I'm already, like, I had fallen in love with this character and what he was as, because, like you were saying, in most other origin movies, and especially, I feel like, Spider-Man movies, you don't really get to know Peter Parker that much before you get into the whole Spider-Man of it all. So this was definitely very refreshing when it came out, and still refreshing when you rewatch it now.
Rewatching it for this show, the movie I kept thinking about the most, and I bring it up constantly on the podcast, is Superman the movie. And I think that this shares a kind of wonder and impact that Superman the movie also takes pleasure in for a superhero film, that a lot of superhero films, like you said, have kind of put to the wayside. Even something like Raimi's Spider-Man, which is the most we get to know Peter Parker before he becomes Spider-Man of any Peter Parker Spider-Man movie, is still, it's working pretty quick to get to the Spider-Man of it all.
Yes, and specifically with the Raimis, it's a lot of that struggle moments, that transition period in the movie between, like, no powers and becoming Spider-Man, like perfecting powers. It's played for way more for laughs in Raimi, and
Absolutely.
I mean, it is funny, like the wrestling stuff, the, you know, him trying to figure out his web shooting stuff, like it is funny. But in something like Spider-Verse here, where that is the plot of the movie, is him, like, struggling with himself, it feels so much more heavy in those character moments, but not heavy in, like, a suffocating way. It's like you want him to struggle so you can see the journey instead of getting straight into it, which is, I mean, pretty much everything in the MCU with, like, Tom Holland and all that was pretty much just, like, directly into the most advanced Spider-Man stuff that we could ever have, and we're kind of working backwards from that.
With Spider-Verse, I think they also front-load a lot of Miles' characterization, because for reasons that we'll get into in spoilers, the movie has to divert its attention a great deal after a certain point when Miles is Spider-Man. Whereas in something like the Raimi movies, I feel like we're getting to know Peter Parker more intimately than we do before he becomes Spider-Man throughout, you know, all of the Spider-Man 1 and all of Spider-Man 2. To a lesser extent in 3, because they're coasting a little bit on, you get it, you know who this guy is.
Yeah.
But yeah, Miles, you get him to know a lot up top, and then he's still growing throughout the film, but it becomes a lot less focused on his personality after a certain point, which works very well for the story. I don't think that's a complaint of mine.
I mean, even thematically, that with the other cast of characters in this movie and with the overall message, it does kind of start to bleed out in that same kind of satisfying way that doesn't feel like they're quite abandoning it, the idea of fleshing out that character personally, but integrating it in with, like, the larger wearing the mask kind of idea of what the messaging is by the end of this movie.
Totally. I think that's very well put, Seamus.
Thank you.
And Shameik Moore is an outstanding Miles Morales. I think he brings this great middle school, squeaky-voiced teenage element to Miles, very vulnerable element to Miles, while still projecting an inner strength that he has throughout the whole film. And obviously, you know, he grows into a little bit more by the end of his journey. And I think that this, and I don't know how they recorded this movie, I don't think they did it all in the booth together, but I could be wrong, because I think that he has really, really good chemistry with Jake Johnson's Peter Parker and Haley Steinfeld's Gwen Stacy, and especially his father, played by Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah, oh man, his moments with his parents specifically, in the voice work that they're doing together, it is incredible. And I know in the last few iterations of Spider-Man, we have also been we know who Spider-Man is, and there's his aunt is there, and that's what we're gonna work with, but it's such a different kind of familial relationship that we're not used to with the civilian human side of a Spider-Man, and it makes this movie so much more special and warm feeling when you do get to the parts where they are reconciling in their own personal storylines with each other, you know, post-action, doing removed from the more supervillainy things. I just loved all of that, and it makes me very scared for what's gonna happen in this new one, because tragedy follows a Spider-Man, and we know this for a fact.
Yeah, I am scared because they also have a great cast of characters that they could just pick off one by one, because this is a pretty big cast for the kind of movie that it is. And, obviously not everybody's making it out of this one anyway. We won't get into who until spoilers, but
Sure.
There are a lot of folks that it would be very sad to have to say goodbye to, I think, in a new one.
Sad, but it's sad but exciting. It's so its own thing. It's such a joy to not have to worry about any other kind of superhero things in something like this. Like, oh, what are going to be the repercussions for the other 100 movies or whatever if this character dies? So you kind of know that they're safe until, there's something bigger. But this is much like the first one we're talking about today. This upcoming one is like, it's uncharted territory in its own right, even if it is a sequel to something else that was so unexpected when it came out.
And that is a strength, absolutely, of this franchise that most superhero movies don't get to have, is they are autonomous. They don't have to worry about the impact of building a larger cinematic universe. They're straightforward stories, because we didn't go and get a bunch of different... There's not, like, the Chris Pine Peter Parker Spider-Man movie, and there's not, the Spider-Gwen spin-off show.
Which,
stuff.
I mean... won't.
It,
hey, listen, I know what kind of companies we're dealing with here, and they like money, Garrett. You like money?
I mean, I guess.
Yeah, it's maybe inevitable, but as it stands right now, it feels so pure and nice. And even more specifically, we don't have this style of animation of Iron Man coming in a couple of years, or we don't have this same team working on an Avengers specific thing. It's in a safe zone as it stands, and I very much like that.
By the way, I just looked it up. This movie came out in December, so we were both totally wrong.
What? Go to hell. You get out. You get right out of here in this apartment that we're both in.
Well, Seamus, I do want to talk about the cast a little bit more, just saying that, because I already mentioned, Shamik Moore and Jake Johnson and Chris Pine and Haley Steinfeld and Brian Tyree Henry, all great. But also, I mean, Mahershala Ali, Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali, Lily Tomlin, Zoe Kravitz, John Mulaney, Nicolas Cage, Catherine Hahn, the always underrated Liev Schreiber. It's kind of insane.
It's stacked.
What a cast this movie has.
Yeah, and they're all doing such a good job that, like, I definitely, on my initial watch of this, like, way back in the day, I definitely didn't, like, realize that was Liev Schreiber as Kingpin in here until, like, the credits rolled, pretty much.
I mean, how can you? He's so good at doing different voices, too.
It is true. He really sinks into that one, and that's why I love that character to death.
I think this is a really good example of having a bunch of celebrities in your movie, but not because they're celebrities, because they're genuinely good choices for the roles that they're in, and that their voice acting is competent, and not just like, hey guys, look, Nick Kroll is in Sing.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I probably finally learned Jake Johnson's name because of this. I was always like, it's that guy from New Girl, but I think I actually straight up finally learned his name because of Spider-Verse.
I always called him that guy from Safety Not Guaranteed. Which
wow,
is
dude,
a weird pick,
I like that movie though. I watched that movie ages ago alone on like early Netflix, and I was like, "This is weird." I'm into it. I big time into it.
Yeah, it's like, you're in high school. It's an accessible indie movie with people you kind of know.
Yeah, you watch Safety Not Guaranteed and Frank, that movie with Donald Gleason and Michael Fassbender, a movie I still love, by the way.
Which is a few years after Safety Not Guaranteed, I think, but it's definitely the same, like...
It was in that same realm of,
appeal.
like, they were both in the same categories on Netflix for, like, 1,000 years. They were, like, right next to each other.
But I think the fact that we're digressing into this,
into Frank,
probably, we should go ahead and call spoilers, because there is a lot to talk about in this movie. So I'm going to say official spoiler warning for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? My favorite, maybe my actual favorite character, like Marvel character that I never knew about until this movie, Miles's Uncle Aaron.
Oh really? So
incredible.
So you didn't really know a lot about Miles Morales then before this movie, I take
No,
it.
not really at all, actually. I was going in pretty cold. I'd known, like, vaguely the idea, but I didn't know what Prowler was. I had no idea what that villain was. I didn't know really anything about the personal life of Miles Morales, just kind of how that idea came to be and like kind of where it stood. So I loved all that. And the Prowler music, which I was talking to you before, the Prowler theme is
so
maybe the best piece of villain music ever written.
It's a really strong, really menacing leitmotif running through the movie, and the fact that this movie gets really scary for, not even for an animated movie, but I think for a superhero movie at all, that really heightens the impact of when Prowler comes onto the scene.
There's a straight up jump scare in that scene where he is sneaking back into his uncle's apartment and he doesn't know about the Prowler and him yet. So I don't know. That was genuinely heartbreaking though. I mean, if we're jumping right into it, damn you, Kingpin, and making Spider-Man who he is by killing his uncle.
Ain't that just the way?
It really is though. They have a little powwow. All the spider people have a powwow about their dead Uncle Ben and all that. Uncle Benjamin and Gwen's was just other Spider-Man, right? Like Spider-Man?
It was Peter Parker. It was
right.
Spider-Man.
Right, yes.
Because he was not Spider-Person in that universe, of course. Which I think that does get a little easy to forget because, of course, Chris Pine's Spider-Man also exists in Miles' universe.
Well, not for long. I mean, how devastating was that, really, though? Watching giant 12-foot shoulder span Kingpin bash Spider-Man's head in? He, beats him to death. It's crazy.
It's pretty bleak, and I think it's a testament to just the star power of Chris Pine, one, but how well that character's written and animated that the second he shows up on screen, you are really into it. Mm-hmm. You enjoy him. He is a fun, exciting character to be around, which makes it all the more devastating when they take him out. Because it's not just like, oh, I like him because he's Spider-Man. I like him because he's a version of Spider-Man that I enjoy watching.
A version of Spider-Man who instantly is like mentor instincts kick in and he's like, hey kid, who we know is super unsure throughout the first 20 minutes of this movie, I'm gonna be your man, you're my boy now, and then absolutely cut short. We see his funeral. His MJ is giving a eulogy at his funeral. It's so dark.
I think it's crazy that they got Zoe Kravitz to be, I mean, I guess she wasn't as big of a star back in 2018, but to be MJ for what essentially amounts to 2 scenes, maybe?
Yeah, there's the scene when she's giving the eulogy and then they bump into each other at the Spider-Man benefit dinner or whatever, and that's pretty much it, I think, dialogue-wise, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I have no idea if she's going to be in the new one or if, because she is Chris Pine's MJ, who looks an awful lot like Jake Johnson's MJ, but presumably Jake Johnson's MJ is the one that would be in the new Spider-Verse. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how they continue on that relationship.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the MJ stuff. I'm unsure of how many different Spider-Verses we are going to be jumping around into, but I can't wait to go to Spider-Pig's universe and see Nick Kroll, Green Goose or something.
You are totally right.
For sure, right? There's going to be a Looney Tunes showdown where he's going to be it's going to be Doc Ock, but it's just a real octopus, maybe. I'm trying to think of animal things here.
Have you watched the Spider-Ham bonus feature on the Blu-ray?
I don't think I have, no.
I have been waiting to watch it for years, and then I finally watched it as a little, preamble, a pre-show short before I sat down for Spider-Verse for this one, and it's just a funny little Looney Tunes animated short. It's not super funny, but it is enjoyable. It's a good execution of that premise, and I would love to see that, with the budget of what the big movie would be able to put into it.
That would be very fun. I'm very much into that. I'm also pretty much expecting all of the No Way Home folks to show up in the after, at some point, right?
I'm assuming I hope it's just an after credit scene because I think it would be really distracting to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what I'm assuming that they'll do. That's probably all the agency that they have with that idea, because then it just straight up turns into No Way Home at that point, and then that's a different movie. You know, I still like that movie, but that's a very different movie.
Not to mention, how would you even incorporate, like, because it'll be fun to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse, but, like, then you have to deal with the whole, like, the fallout of how, that impacts the MCU.
I assume it would be more like, maybe even, like, just Toby and Andrew, and they're like, oh, we just got out of that last one, we got sucked into this one, and then they get sucked back into their own, like, really rapidly.
That's what would be funny, is if, like, because the best part of No Way Home is the two of them as just, like, beaten down old man Spider-Man. Like, yeah, we've been doing this a long time, but you're the only other guy who I've ever met who gets it,
Yeah, their backs hurt together.
So I do like the idea of they have become, like, buddies. They're on a buddy cop movie adventure where they're like,
they're doing Bill and Ted. Yeah, they're doing Bill and Ted together, but they're both Spider-Man.
That's pretty good, actually. But we should talk about this movie and not No Way Home.
That is true. Back to the good, great, amazing, like, honest to God, some of the best action sequences in an animated movie. Like, they're obviously playing up so much of the comic book cartoon angle of how the action can be, but my God, is it fluid and amazing and all that I want in any of my superhero movies.
This and The Incredibles, not just because they're superhero movies, but I genuinely believe that they are not only the best animated action films, but some of the best action films pretty much of all time, in terms of the clarity of their geography and the execution of the incredibly well thought out set pieces that they develop over the course of the films. I gotta say, I do not think this is as good a movie as The Incredibles, but what is, The
Incredibles is pretty S-tier stuff. I don't blame you for being a little skeptical on that, but just think about how well you have to execute something like the crazy shattered multiverse climax battle with the trains and stuff flying around, and still, like, know exactly what's going on. You're in this weird giant domed space that's also, like, flipping in and out of different universes. And you still have an eye on multiple spider people who kind of look the same from a distance, and they're all getting the spotlight when need be. They're doing all their special moves in ways that don't get just, like, lost in the crazy flashing light, changing color beam of, like, splitting realities open. It's incredibly well executed.
I think it's a really smart decision to not have more than one Peter Parker at a time in this movie, because
in terms of, like, Peter B. Parker versus, like, Penny Parker, like, they're more distinct than just like the different version of Peter Parker, because
it also helps for clarity. That's another thing that No Way Home had a problem with. I mean, not that the action in No Way Home is anywhere near as thought out.
Oh, no.
But that has a problem where when you're in a one shot, I'm like, is that Toby? I'm not sure who that is.
He's in red and blue spandex. I really can't tell. It gets a little muddy there, but
yeah, every spider person in this movie has a very distinct look that is easy to clock, and I think that's a very intentional, very smart choice on their part. I am sad that we're probably not getting Spider Noir back. That's what I read.
Are you kidding? What? No! I was gonna say, that is the perfect, like, they're on the run from the Council of Spiders, and they're like, we gotta lay low, and someone's like, I know a guy in a dark alley, and they go to black and white Spider Noir verse. That's what I've been dreaming
with the
for.
Rubik's Cube is so funny.
That is incredible too. His fascination with color, but specifically like that piece. I mean, it all comes through in that incredible end credits animation too, where he's like the king of black and white land because he brought in the color cube and is like selling it. He's like a tycoon. I love it.
Oh. He's so good.
Is he your favorite spider person? Let's talk about the different spider people that we focus on here.
I mean, it's a little hard for it to not be Peter B. Parker because you spend so much time with him and you love him so much. It's such an interesting take on that character that we've never really seen in a movie before.
I love bum Spider-Man. Having a kid bring you to a burger place and then eating his burger like is such a funny, sad version of Spider-Man. I really do love him.
And then the thing that really makes it for me, it's not just the, beginning portion or even the mentor portion of Peter B. Parker, but the fact that then he and Lily Tomlin's May get to come together, and she's the one, she lost her Peter and he lost his May, but they get to come together and be in each other's lives again. And I think that's such a beautiful, touching moment that could be explored a little bit more in this movie, but what they do with it, they do really well.
Yeah, I really like all the stuff they do with May, actually, in this. I think she's one of the more, like, badass. She's got, like, a personal feud with... Oh, I'm forgetting her first name. They do a whole bit about it. Liv Octavius. I think that's really funny.
I think it's interesting that she says her friends call her Liv, and then...
Yeah,
May
dude.
calls her Liv, and also, of course, famously in the comics, Doc Ock marries Aunt May at one point.
Oh yeah! Oh my god, I forgot about that.
So I think that there's there's some cutesy in-jokes there too. But yeah, I mean, Lily Tomlin, a national treasure. We don't talk about Lily Tomlin enough. She's incredible.
Oh man, that whole showdown in the living room too. Everyone kind of comes together in such a... Like, we're talking about how, like, wide and big that last fight was. That fight in the living room, very chaotic, very clustery, claustrophobic, but it's still, again, incredibly done animated action. And then taking that, cutting right to an absolutely emotional gut punch with what they do with Prowler, Uncle Aaron. This is a roller coaster of a movie. I never remember how much of whiplash you have from, like, having the most fun you've ever had in a superhero movie to being actually crushed emotionally by something that's happening.
Yeah, it has really good character work. I mean, there's a reason that really, obviously we've talked about the action, we've talked about the animation, but most of the time that we've been talking so far on this show has been about character, because all of them are engaging and three-dimensional and put together in interesting ways.
Yeah, it is more of a magnification of what other multiverse concepts sometimes don't grasp enough, is that the differences between the same, the variant people need to be the highlight of everything. And it is funny when there's, like, weird similarities between people like that, but everyone is an individual in this. And again, maybe it helps that there are less Peter Parkers proper, which I'm sure we're going to run into a lot more in the second one, but together as the collective of these weird, strange folks, it hammers home more the theme of, anyone can wear the mask, like I was saying before, and this found family emotional theming that we find in all of these, sad but strong and capable spider people that kind of land in each other's laps. I don't know. I'm thinking a lot about the second one coming up and our friends coming back together and reconnecting a little bit. I don't know how many of them are going to make a real comeback, but I can hope.
I also think, to that point, and obviously this was not the intention when it was created, but posthumously, the immediate transition from Peter Parker's funeral to Stan Lee is pretty powerful. And I'm not even a huge, like, Stan Lee guy. I don't get teary about when Stan Lee's cameos come up posthumously, but I do think that that's a very impactful, because that's really the character I think that he's going to be the most remembered for, and that I seem to have the most connection with on a personal level. And so
with Spider-Man, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Historically, he's been that kind of champion for that character. And I mean, very funny. Like, they do end it with like a great joke, but also it is a very sweet moment in a sea of other cameos that sometimes don't hit as well. I mean, when they work really well, and I get a good smile out of it, but this one was perfect.
The idea that he gets to be the one to say, you get to, anyone can wear the mask. Like, he doesn't literally say that, I don't think, but...
Doesn't he? Does
he?
It's like, he's like, anyone can wear the mask, and he smiles, and then it pans over, and it's like the no refunds sign or whatever.
He says it always fits eventually.
There it is. Which is
a funnier line, too.
yeah, it really, that is great.
Yeah, I do love the idea of there's already Spider-Man merch in this world, so you can just put on your Spider-Man costume when you get Spider-Man powers.
I mean, do you not love the Miles Morales spray paint Spider-Man suit? Like, it is one of the coolest suits, with the hoodie, with the sneakers. I think it's iconic. It is like as iconic as the normal Spider-Man suit to me at this point.
I think so. I mean, what's up, Danger?
Oh yeah, dude, that is such a hype part of that movie. It gets my blood moving.
I think that is probably the most impactful moment of hero realization of any movie, because it's also the great, like, he was already Spider-Man, but this is the moment he becomes Spider-Man, and this movie really wants to put it in those exact terms. That's what throwing the comic book on top of the other comic books that's the statement that's making.
Oh man, it is so good. I mean, and honestly, have you I'm sure have listened to the whole soundtrack for this as well. There's the moments in that sequence where the score like starts to come in to the soundtrack, and like it gets me really excited even just thinking about it. It's a great scene.
I'm somehow like feeling like we're ready to wrap things up. We just spent half an hour saying all of the really like, it feels really surface level, even though I feel like we've hit every quadrant of this film, just because there is so much detail and so much to talk about. And the bagel joke and the whole breaking out of the lab sequence is so much fun. And there's so many different things we could expand upon.
Like, we spent so much time talking about the animation, and we could do a whole episode about that, truly. The thwips, the overlays of Spidey senses and what that means in the perspective of, oh my god, we really could.
Just the use of Kirby dots, I think, is incredible.
Oh gosh, I'm ready to watch this movie again. I could watch this movie anytime, I think. It is one of the perfect films.
I am really excited for next week. I'm even more excited for next week, Seamus, which we often end up being after we cover like the first one of whatever the sequel is that we're reviewing.
That is true, but especially for this one, I think we're coming off the heels of greatness, and I'm ready to keep that train chugging along.
I agree, because I do want, the last thing I'll mention is just the power of the Get Up Spider-Man moment, that they know exactly how far to take that.
Oh yeah, so good. And that there's that part, start of the third act, really, where they're trying to formulate the plan, and they're kind of excluding him, and they're trying to get him to get with the program, and it is perfectly palpable for this coming of Spider-Man character. I loved it. Incredible.
But why don't we go ahead and move on over to more Spider-Verse talk in our pop culture reference.
Let's do it, Spider-Man.
For today's pop culture reference, we're going to be talking about the technological innovations of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The way the 2018 animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was created brought new technology and innovation to animated film production. While traditional 3D animated films are animated at a full 24 frames per second, much of Spider-Verse was animated using a process called stepped animation, or on-twos, where an element is held for 2 frames, therefore only using 12 images a second. Stepped animation and 24-frame animation are both found in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, sometimes even in the same shot, as different elements or characters will move at different speeds. This is especially impactful during sequences with lots of fluid motion, such as action sequences.
Studio Sony Pictures Imageworks also developed a new technology for integration of 2D effects with 3D animation, stylized rendering, and rigging and facial work to enhance character performances. This hyper-stylization also allowed directors Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman to fulfill their desire of having Spider-Man in poses, frames, and situations more faithful to comic books than what can be usually shown in live-action Spider-Man films. It also meant that the film had an atypical creation process, where creatives from different areas of the production pipeline had to collaborate more frequently and differently than any other previous animated film.
The style of Spider-Verse had a massive impact on the Hollywood animation industry. Sony Pictures Imageworks reused the technology they developed for Spider-Verse on their later film, The Mitchells vs. the Machines,
and several DreamWorks animated films have clearly been influenced by the animation style as well, such as The Bad Guys and this year's Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. In addition to films with a reminiscent style to Spider-Verse, the film is also credited in opening up the kind of animation audiences will expect from Western 3D animation studios, which for decades have predominantly created films with a clean and relatively uniform Pixar-esque stylization. I mean, it's kind of crazy what a turning point this is in mainstream 3D animation. How much more stylized things have gotten in the animation realm since this movie came out. Something we didn't even mention on here is that upcoming Ninja Turtles movie that's got that like Spider-Verse-y, almost claymation animation style, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think I might have touched on this a little bit in the main segment of how absolutely refreshing this kind of animation is, and the refreshing nature of how it is really spreading out all over Western animation as it is. The Pixar, Illumination, clean bubble people, that has its place, but I was getting real tired of it. So, I mean, if anything is going to solidify, like, what really made this so iconic, it's that, 10 layers of different kinds of dimensions of animation on top of itself. That's what makes this such a classic, modern classic.
But Seamus, what do you say we move on over and, like Spider-Man, save the rec center?
Let's do it.
Save the rec center!
Now it's time to save the rec center, where we give you our weekly recommendations. Garrett, what do you got for me this week?
Well, a film that I have been wanting to watch for a long time now and finally got around to. It's been in a weird rights limbo for decades and still is not out of it, but I finally pulled the trigger and watched a decent transfer of it on Vimeo, which is really the only way to watch it anymore unless you can dig up an old DVD. Elaine May's second directorial effort, The Heartbreak Kid, starring Charles Grodin and Sybil Shepherd. And it is such a fantastic anti-rom-com. I think that it is definitely worth being in the conversation with Mike Nichols' The Graduate, which is, I think, a pretty interesting thing because Mike Nichols was a longtime comedy collaborator with Elaine May before the two of them both turned to doing directing for movies. So I'm really glad that I got in there. I think you know of my affinity for Charles Grodin. Sybil Shepherd is often a treat, especially in that era when she was working with people like Peter Bogdanovich and, of course, Elaine May. So I was looking for a nice, light 70s comedy, and I got a mean-spirited but still very fun, very engaging, well-made 70s comedy.
I am a huge fan when things of the 70s and 80s are way meaner than you expect them to be. That's one of my favorite things to discover about older comedies like that, so that sounds like it's right up my alley.
Well, I'll shoot you that Vimeo link, Seamus, and I'm sure others around the internet-verse can find it on their own, but I'm curious to hear what you've got coming up.
On a whim, I guess on recommendation from my older brother, Coleman, he was talking this movie up to me for a while, but I finally pulled the trigger, just randomly came across it on Hulu. David Cronenberg's 2022 Crimes of the Future. And I was delighted and horrified and sick to my stomach as any good Cronenberg movie will make me do. Viggo Mortensen, Lea Seydoux, Kristen Stewart. It is one of, is it redundant to say this Cronenberg movie is incredibly bizarre? But it really is, man. It is in a future where humans have evolved out of having a sense of physical pain, and Viggo Mortensen and Lea Seydoux are a performance art duo who do performative surgery on Viggo Mortensen's rapidly growing new human organs. It's really gross, obviously. It's all about surgery and how in this future, surgery is the new sex, and that's how people get intimate with each other.
I can hear Kristen Stewart saying that in the trailer.
Oh, she is delightfully disgusting in this movie. It's like her weird, meek, quiet, awkward thing that she's famous for, but ramped up into a surgery pervert. It is incredible. I loved it to death. It was everything I wanted and nothing nothing that I was expecting.
That's a Cronenberg.
That's a Cronenberg, man. Somehow maybe the least grotesque Cronenberg, even though it's about like how doing medical experiments on yourself is like kind of fine now and people watch it for fun. But I highly recommend it. It is the second thing I've ever seen Viggo Mortensen in, so it's kind of crazy to see it go from Aragorn to a famous performance surgery artist. But it is incredible. I'll never forget it.
I've wanted to see that since it came out, and I have just never been in the right headspace for it. It's hard to find a time when you're like, yeah, I'm ready for this Cronenberg.
Apparently the right headspace is on a whim while you know, there's somebody taking a nap on your lap who keeps waking up every 20 minutes and asking what the hell I'm watching. It's pretty great.
Well, I'll have to check that out eventually. I really do want to, Seamus. I think I knew more about it because you and I were talking about that movie recently, and
it's been on my mind because like we were talking about it. My older brother really recommended it along with Cronenberg Jr.'s newer movie. I have not seen yet.
I forgot about that one.
But I actually mixed up the two concepts of those two movies, so I was waiting for like an hour and a half for like a very different plot to kick in. But I loved every second of the movie that I got.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, Seamus.
But that wraps up the show this week. If you want to reach the show on social media, you can hit us up at PCR_podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can reach the show directly at popculturereferencepod@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, praise, anything, you can send directly to us there. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, hit us up with the downloads on our new episodes. Anything you can do to engage with the show definitely helps us out a lot. And we notice it. We notice every little spike in that kind of engagement. And it really makes us happy, really helps the show out.
Well, next week, I am so excited to dip back into the Spider-Verse with Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse when we team back up with Miles and Wanda and Peter B. Parker, and, you know, we get Oscar Isaac in the mix.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about him. Oh, man, it's going to be a great one. I'm very excited.
I am as well. So, everybody, we will see you next week.
Adios, Spider-Man. Did he say that in the movie even, maybe? Did he say adios, Spider-Man?
Maybe, who knows?
Bet live forever.